Welcome to LIS754, Systems Analysis and Design. And in this video, we are going to talk about the various elements that we can use to make up a user interface. Many of us are familiar with using computerized systems to enter data, to search, but we may not know the names of these specific elements that make up the user interface. So this one should be clear to us. This is a calendar control. So if you have a date that you want to have entered and have it be a real date, a sure date with a nice graphical way for doing data entry, you can use this kind of a feature, and people can choose the month and the year and the date, and this control will ensure that those are valid dates, and people can click on them. So this is a calendar control feature. This is a dialog box. We have different options in this dialog box that they can basically tabs that people can search, can click on, and will bring up different options. This is a drop-down box that people can choose from a preset list of options. These are called radio buttons. They're a choice button that allows only one choice, so it's basically a toggle. It's this option, but you can't choose both options. Again, this is just a straight text box. We call these command buttons. Anything that you click that causes an action to happen is a control button. OK, cancel, advanced, all of those are control buttons as well. Here we've got radio buttons again, text boxes in a more Windows-looking interface. This is a drop-down list that people can, again, choose from. This is a status toggle. It's called a status toggle. You click on or off, you have one option. It could be different values as well, but a button that it's called a toggle button. We all know what a menu bar looks like across the top. I'm going to just come out of the play video, the slideshow, to show you. This is what we talk about with the menu bar. It usually has the program name, file, edit, view are very common ones, format for things that allow you to format data. Each of these has a specific set of actions that can happen. And in our previous video, we talked a little bit about options that get grayed out. Here's an option. I can't undo anything because I haven't made a change since the last time I've saved it. So I can't undo something. So this is what we mean when we talk about a grayed out option in a menu list. We don't want to allow people to do things they can't do. But this is a menu bar. These are menu bars, and these are drop-down menus. Command button we talked about. A dialog box allows people to enter information. A text box allows people to type in data. That toggle is the on and off button. And a list box allows the list of choices. A drop-down box list was what displays the current selection and allows people, then you can click on it and change it. The radio button. A checkbox, I didn't have an image of a checkbox, but instead of the radio button, use a radio button when you want only one choice in a set of options. A checkbox allows you to have multiple choices. One or more choices, and then the calendar control. This is a good list to have at your side when you are thinking about your interface. You can choose these different, from these different options to design your interface. So we want to design screens that are attractive, easy to use, and workable, usable allows people to get their work done. And as we're designing, we want to get feedback early and often, because we want to have really good screen designs before we start programming. An opening screen can be really important because it introduces the application, it introduces the website, it introduces our application, and allows people to see the primary options that they will have. So I have a couple of, it's often called a splash screen, your first screen up. So this is from Barnes & Noble. It's, some of this is really advertising, right? So these are the things they would like you to look at. These are new materials. Their search feature is very prominent. Their navigation is immediately obvious. So these are the options that appear basically on every screen throughout the system. You see it here. They use their entry screen, their splash screen, to advertise and to entice you to buy these particular items. This is a Starbucks rewards program. It has a different look. This is the screen when one of their primary screens. And you can see that it's really a very minimal aesthetic, right? It's a very white, lots of white space, very little text. The text is really a minimal type of font, very stark font. One of the things is it's so minimal that it's actually hard to find the data entry point. This is their text box. It is almost indistinguishable, right here. It's indistinguishable from the background. So having a minimal aesthetic is really lovely. Having lots of white space, clear command buttons. But man, this is a text box, a text entry box, really hard to see. So we want to make sure that even though this is lovely and aesthetic, and it's still hard to use. So while we want it to be pleasingly aesthetic and we wanted to help users accomplish their tasks, we also need to make sure that the data that we get in this process is of high quality, it's accurate, it's correct in every way. And so there's a very common term in computer programming called garbage in, garbage out. That is, bad data in produces bad results. So it's a very common idea in computer science that it's best to avoid problems. It's really hard to correct bad data. It's easier to get good data in than it is to find and correct bad data. So we want to, when we are doing input design, screens for taking in data, for getting data from our users, to make sure that we have good data. So we want to pay attention to human factors and technology issues. So how do we design an input screen? We can use, if we're automating a paper process, a manual process, there are often forms that we can use for this. And I know that some of the people who are developing systems for this class or designing systems for this class have those kinds of forms, test forms, membership forms, all sorts of forms. Those can be a source of a design point form for you, a design point for your input form. So if we have a form like this, where we have, name, birth date, telephone number, we can mimic this. This is a good way to mimic. Here we've got, this is for taking in student data. So we can have these kinds of boxes. Will work the same way. This would have to be a radio button, right? Because you can't be both a freshman and a sophomore. You have to be one or the other. So this is a way that we can do, we can use these kinds of forms to help us build our data interfaces. So we want to be able to take this data and get it into our system. In some way, sometimes we have input sources besides a keyboard. Most of us will have systems that use keyboards. We could have card readers. We could have OCR QR code readers. We could have barcode readers. All of those are sources of input to bring data in. Most of us, however, will have an online data entry is an online form with text boxes where people will type. And where we want to make sure that we have a good descriptive caption for every field that we are asking people to put in, that we show the user where to enter that data, that we make sure that when people hit the tab button, that it moves, that tab will move them to the next logical field so that we can move them through the screen without them having to necessarily point and click at each one of those. It can be very useful to display a sample format if a user must enter values. So if we are going to require people to type in a credit card number, we may want to say no blanks, or we may want to say whatever we want to, give them directions for what they should do. This idea of requiring an ending keystroke for every field really means to hit enter or to tab away. We do not want to have to require people to type in leading zeros. This seems like a funny statement, but things like your Dominican ID has leading zeros, and we're forced to enter that into MyDU. It makes me a little crazy. So here's what here's like a Microsoft a form developed out of Microsoft Access. So a form we have an order number. This is generated by the system. We have a customer ID that's entered by the customer. We have information that can be retrieved from the system. We have data that is calculated by the system. So all of these, so we have lots of ways. So this is how a data form would happen. People type in some data, other data is generated. So it's a real mix of data. So when you're designing your interface, think of what data people will create and what data your system can provide. We shouldn't make people type in today's date, right? We should supply today's date and the time. If people are looking up an order that they placed, or if people are looking up past test scores, we should be able to get that data through a number, through a test number, through a student name. If we are calculating things like the interest on someone's account, those are things that the system will supply. We want to have as many default values as possible, so we can suggest, so our users, our customers, are the people who are coming to our system to complete a task can type in some letters, start with someone's name and have it fill in, start with order numbers, have them fill in when it's possible to do. Film titles, whatever we are, have people type in. If we can match it and find it, it's very useful. If we know that we need to have an invoice number or some kind of a number on several successive screens, we would like it would be really terrific if the system would remember it and default and fill that in at the next screen. It's really helpful to know what the acceptable values for a field are and to provide meaningful errors. We would like to be able to leave the data entry screen. We'd like to be able to save data when it's appropriate. We'd like to cancel an ad if we need to. We'd like to be able to go to the help screen and come back to the data entry screen without having lost information. I was at one airline site. I was trying to buy a ticket, and I went and wanted to look at, I had filled in a great deal of information. I wanted to go back and look at I hit one of the links to go look at one of the help things, and when I came back, all my data was gone. I had to start all over again. I was crabby about that. Right, so here's another data entry design option: an order number, the date, a customer ID, a customer name. Enter the item. If you enter an item number, the description should come up. If I enter the description, the item number should come up. And if there's more than one, several should appear, and I can pick from that list. These are the command buttons. I want to cancel an order, find an order, enter an order, etc.